What the Antichrist will do in 2024 is shocking. There is a palpable sense of urgency in the air. It is clear for all who believe in God's prophetic timeline that the clock is ticking and time is of the essence. The world undeniably, unquestionably, irrefutably stands at a crossroads where God's prophetic timeline is unfolding. And because of the signs of the times we live in, the urgency in our hearts should mirror the urgency of the times. There is a clear shift occurring in our world, and a message that we must not ignore. The title of our sermon is, What the Antichrist Will Do in 2024 is Shocking. May indeed sound startling and even unsettling, but it is imperative that we address this topic with open hearts and minds. For, as believers, it is not only our duty but our calling to discern the signs of the times and understand the spiritual battle being waged in our world today.
The purpose of our sermon today is twofold: to draw your attention to the very real presence of the spirit of Antichrist in our midst, and to shed light on how this spirit is setting the stage for what could be a shocking series of events in the year 2024. We find ourselves at a crossroads in history, where the tides of darkness and deception are rising and the clock is ticking toward what may be a critical juncture in human history. To establish a biblical foundation for our sermon, let us turn to the inspired words of the Apostle John, found in the first and second epistles of John. In 1 John 4:3, we read these words, "But every spirit that does not acknowledge Jesus is not from God. This is the spirit of the Antichrist, which you have heard is coming and even now is already in the world." Notice the profound truth conveyed in this verse. The spirit of Antichrist is not merely a future threat, it is a present reality, already at work in our world. There is a movement on this earth of the spirit of the Antichrist. It is happening in our nations, our institutions, on TV, in films, and even in our local neighborhoods. There is a real spirit of the Antichrist. Too often, we Christians are looking and are concerned with the Antichrist, the man. Yes, the Antichrist will come as a man, a real man. But what you need to know and remember is that before he is revealed on the world stage, before he steps forth and takes center stage, his spirit is at work in the world, actively at work, and just as you are filled with the Holy Spirit, there are people who are genuinely filled with the spirit of the Antichrist. They are led, guided, and steered by his spirit. You do not need to be a theologian to see the spirit of the Antichrist taking control of the secular world. In 1 John 2:18, John further warns us, "Dear children, this is the last hour, and as you have heard that the Antichrist is coming, even now many Antichrists have come. This is how we know it is the last hour." John's words resonate with an urgency that we too must recognize today. We are in the last hour, the very last hour. He tells us that even in his time there were many antichrists, those who opposed Christ and sought to lead people away from his truth. Now, you may wonder, why is it essential to focus on the spirit of Antichrist rather than fixate on a specific individual? The reason is clear. By understanding the spirit that opposes Christ, we can better recognize its manifestations in the world around us. We can discern the signs of the times not by speculating about a particular figure's identity, but by observing the increasing lawlessness, moral decay, and deception that characterize our age.
What will the Antichrist spirit do in 2024? In essence, what the Antichrist spirit will do in 2024 is a continuation of what it has been doing since the beginning of the last hour that the Apostle John speaks of. It is a continuation. 1. There will be a clear acceleration in the rejection of truth and an acceptance of darkness. In the past 15 years, we have seen a clear acceleration in rejection of truth, and this will only continue in 2024. The spirit of the Antichrist at its core is against truth. Jesus Christ is truth. Jesus Christ is light, and we can see tides shifting in this world. more and more as people are no longer accepting absolute truth. We are living in a world where people love darkness. Look at the nonsense being accepted in the world today. That is not natural. It's almost as if common sense is not common anymore. Everyone has their own truth. And this will continue. We are living in a world that is in La La Land. A world where some people have rejected reality and have decided to live in their own reality. 2. Preparation for worship of a man. The conditioning of people to follow and worship a charismatic leader or figure will continue to escalate in the coming years, including in 2024. When the Antichrist arrives, it will not take him decades to be revered and worshipped. Right now, the hearts of men and women across the globe are being subtly persuaded by the spirit of the Antichrist to place their trust and allegiance in human man rather than in God. People have the mistaken perception that when the Antichrist arrives, he will have to overhaul the world and shift the way the world operates drastically. But that's not the case. When the Antichrist emerges and takes center stage in society, the world will already be primed for him. Unfortunately, this same spirit of the Antichrist is present in many churches and within many churchgoers. Look at the misconduct occurring in some churches. Look at the immorality present in some religious settings. Numerous churches now seem energized and driven by the very spirit of the Antichrist. It might be uncomfortable for some to hear, but if the Antichrist were to appear today and begin his rule, there are churches that would embrace him. They would not only accept him but endorse him. They wouldn't just endorse him. They would also take his mark and worship him. Why? Because they are influenced by his spirit, which is already active in the world, paving the way for his emergence. If the Antichrist were here today, there are people you know who would accept him and his mark. We often underestimate the influence and activity of the spirit of the Antichrist in our world. 3. The Antichrist spirit will move the world closer to the acceptance of the mark. The concept of the mark of the beast, as mentioned in the book of Revelation, is a haunting reminder of the depths of deception that the spirit of Antichrist can achieve. While we cannot predict the exact form this mark will take, societal trends suggest that people may become increasingly accustomed to the idea of accepting a mark or system that grants them access to goods, services, and privileges. This gradual acceptance can make individuals more susceptible to compromising their faith and allegiance to Christ for the sake of convenience and worldly gain.
Revelation 13:16-17. And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. For generations, scholars, theologians, and saints in God have pondered over this prophecy, considering it as a distant scenario in an unimaginable future. However, with the rate of technological advancement and societal shifts we're witnessing today, this prophecy seems less like a far-off vision and more like a looming reality. The digital age has ushered in capabilities we could only dream of a few decades ago. The world we live in today is completely different to the world we lived in 40 years ago. Today, the vehicles through which you are listening to me right now simply were not around and were unimaginable. Biometric technologies, such as fingerprint and facial recognition, have become commonplace. RFID chips and near-field communication, NFC technologies, are integrated into our everyday lives, from contactless payments to keyless entries. Furthermore, there's a global push towards a cashless society where digital currencies and online transactions are rapidly becoming the norm. These developments represent the infrastructure that could, in theory, support the kind of system described in Revelation 13. Moreover, the world's increasing interconnectivity and the convergence of global financial systems mean that implementing a universal system, like the one portrayed in the prophecy, is more feasible now than ever before. We are in the last hour, ladies and gentlemen. The last hour John spoke of is here. The unprecedented events of recent times, particularly over the last 5 years, have showcased the world's ability to rally together and adopt unified solutions. Such unity, while promising in many respects, also sets the stage for a singular world leader or system to exercise the kind of influence described in Revelation. In essence, while we cannot definitively state that we are on the brink of witnessing Revelation 13, 16, 17's fulfillment, the pieces of the puzzle are evidently on the table. The world has never been so primed, technologically and socio-politically, for these events to transpire. It's a sobering reminder of the timeless relevance of ancient prophecies and the need to be vigilant in these changing times. The spirit of the Antichrist in 2024 will continue to work towards this goal for men and women to accept man of sin when he comes.
4. The increase in sin and lawlessness. In biblical prophecy, one of the titles that stands out prominently is the man of lawlessness. This description provides insight into the character and nature of an end-time figure who stands in stark opposition to the divine order and God's law. This title paints a picture of a person who embodies chaos, rebellion, and a blatant disregard for righteousness. The man of lawlessness is, in many interpretations, synonymous with the Antichrist, a figure prophesied to emerge in the end times, leading the world astray with his deceit and charisma. The increasing lawlessness observed in today's world is a testament to the pervasive influence of the spirit of the Antichrist. As societies drift away from godly standards and biblical values, the spirit that drives humanity towards lawlessness gains momentum. The times we live in mirror the prophecies, showcasing a clear rise in defiance against moral absolutes and spiritual truth. The chaos, moral decay, and heightened rebellion against divine order are all preparatory stages for the final manifestation of the Antichrist. Heading into 2024, the trajectory seems clear. As the spirit of the Antichrist further entrenches itself, we can anticipate an escalation in lawlessness worldwide. This spirit, already active and influential, will continue to erode moral boundaries, facilitating a climate ripe for the Antichrist's emergence. By preying on societal vulnerabilities and capitalizing on humanity's predisposition towards sin, the spirit of the Antichrist is setting the stage for a future where lawlessness isn't the exception, but the norm. As we look around the world today, we witness a growing departure from moral and ethical values. The lines between right and wrong seem to blur as societal norms shift away from the principles laid out in God's Word. In 2024, this trend is likely to intensify, leading to a rise in lawlessness that challenges the very foundations of civil society. The spirit of Antichrist thrives in an environment where moral relativism prevails, making it easier for people to rationalize behaviors that are in direct disobedience to God's commands. The spirit of the Antichrist is not waiting for a future date to make its presence known. It is active and thriving today. Look around. The evils of the past, the wickedness we've read about in the scriptures, are not just tales of old. They are manifesting before our very eyes. You've heard the stories of Sodom and Gomorrah, cities so wicked that they drew the fiery judgment of God. You've been told of the days of Noah, a time so corrupt that God cleansed the earth with a flood. And who can forget Babylon, the embodiment of human pride, arrogance, and defiance against the Most High? Now hear me on this. The sins, the wickedness, the depravities of those times, they didn't vanish into thin air. No, they've been resurrected, revamped, and repackaged for our day. The modern world, my friends, is a melting pot of every vile thing that has ever defied God. It's as if the devil took a page from each of these ages in history, blending them together to craft the very world we now inhabit. Don't be deceived. We've not progressed, we've regressed. Sin may wear a different mask, but its face is the same. Sin may have modern tools, but its intent is ancient. The devil doesn't need to invent new sins. He simply repurposes the old ones for a new generation. And let me tell you something. The convenience of today's sin should terrify every one of us. There was a time when sin required effort, when you had to venture out into the world to find it. But now, sin comes knocking at our doorsteps, beaming directly into our homes, lurking in the mobile devices we hold in our hands. We are in a digital age where wickedness is but a click away. It's a world where our children, right under our roofs, can be exposed to things that would make Sodom blush. A world where temptation isn't around the corner, but right in our pockets. But let me remind you, this isn't happening by chance. This is orchestrated. It's a concerted effort by the spirit of the Antichrist to numb us, to desensitize us, to make us accept the unacceptable, and to prepare the world for the man of lawless and the man of sin. It's the devil's plan to make sin so common, so prevalent, that we no longer see it for what it truly is, rebellion against a holy God. We are not awaiting the arrival of the Antichrist, my friends. His spirit is already here, working behind the scenes, pulling the strings, shaping cultures and societies, and making the abnormal seem normal. This is the devil's ploy, to prepare the world for the eventual rise of his chosen one.
The world is on a precipice, with the spirit of the Antichrist more potent than ever. As believers, we must equip ourselves with the armor of God, fortify our faith, and shine as beacons of light in the enveloping darkness. The events of 2024, though uncertain in specifics, are unquestionably pivotal in God's prophetic timeline. Let us be diligent, not merely spectators, but active warriors for Christ, standing firm against the deceptive tide and ushering in God's kingdom. The time to prepare and act is now, for the hour is indeed late.